Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Finance Feeds exclusive video interview. My name is Nikolai Isaev. I'm editor-in-chief of Finance Feeds. Joining me today is Remonda Kirketerp-Møller, who is founder and CEO of regtech Muinmos. Ramonda, thanks for joining me. It's great to see you again.
It's a pleasure to see you again, Nikolai. Thank you for inviting me again.
Absolutely, a pleasure. Ramonda, I wanted to kick things off and ask you, in previous interviews, namely with FinTech Global, you said that due to MiCA, quote, we'll probably see a shift of investments in the crypto space towards Europe. And as we approach MiCA implementation, are you seeing this shift play out in the industry and among your clients?
Yes, absolutely, Nikolai. As you probably have been following it closely, and I'm confident the market has too, especially if they have any interest in crypto. As you know, the current state of affairs today is they're currently pretty much guided by AML directives and similar in the various jurisdictions in the European Union. And of course, a lot of it is led through that. There is nothing today other than, of course, MiCA that's coming into play, hopefully towards the end of this year, that actually will have a unified, if you like, regulation that is without doubt creating much more certainty in the crypto space. And that in itself means that there's going to be, without any doubt, even more push towards Europe than we are currently seeing. And we're seeing quite a lot of firms that are getting ready for it, both in the European Union and actually elsewhere, where they're almost guiding themselves through MiCA.
hmm I wanted to ask you a follow-up. What do you think about the role that Spain wants to play? I've read that Spain is trying to take a leading position in terms of implementing or launching the rules and regulations, and I think the announcement that they want to be one of the leading countries or parties in this was quite a while ago. Do you foresee kind of them really playing a crucial role or taking the lead in this?
I actually think one MiCA being a regulation, there's not going to be any particular lead from one member state or the other, to be honest with you, Nikolai. I think the positive thing about MiCA being a regulation, it's going to have a direct application in the member state level, which means that you're not going to leave much room really for each member state to kind of go a little bit outside the scope and make their own legislation that can actually, typically under a directive, they can definitely decide if they would like to add additional elements in order to protect their jurisdiction more for various reasons, as we have seen under MiFID for the past many years. With MiCA, it's a regulation, which means it's going to be applied equally across the member states. And that's a positive thing, which leaves less room really for one, hopefully interpretation, and secondly, also for lack of harmonization, as we've seen in some elements under MiFID, actually, where a number of member states, including Spain, including also, as you know, Germany, Holland, France, etc., that have added additional requirements in order to enhance even more their investor protection. So I'm not sure we're going to see much of that under MiCA, actually. I think MiCA is going to create much more coherent application. And I think that's a really, really positive thing. And I'm glad it went down that route as the correct direction and not under a directive. So that's a positive thing.
hmm Great. When I think about digital asset or crypto regulation, I'm also thinking about other regions of the world. And, for me, today I see in Asia that Hong Kong is trying to go all in. Finance Feeds has covered this story recently where, they were um, heavily marketing, I would say, or saying, hey, if you want to become a regulated firm in Hong Kong, you can apply. And I think the deadline has passed at this point. But what I'm seeing is they're trying to go all in terms of also being a jurisdiction, which is attractive to companies that want to be, want to work in a regulated and equal playing field. And, personally, for me, Dubai seems to be what I would call, quote unquote, the new Switzerland, sort of. Um, do you think these markets have something to offer to perhaps compete with Europe in the near future? What I mean is, if there are also attractive regulatory regimes in these regions of the world, do you foresee that companies might not necessarily not incorporate or be regulated in Europe, but think about also being regulated in these jurisdictions?
Yeah, we do. We definitely see a lot of cases where quite a number of institutions, they often seek us for advice on that basis. But I think what's interesting and what we keep repeating and have been repeating for the past decade plus, even if you do get regulated, for example, in Hong Kong, are you actually offering your business line in Hong Kong, or are you taking on clients from around the world? And I think I don't need to delve too much into this topic during this interview, but without doubt, we've seen how much mess that created pretty much with Brexit. Because
Hmm.
all of a sudden, a lot of people realize, well, why is it all of a sudden that I can't offer my products and services, for example, in the UK and I'm in Europe, and vice versa, and outside? And I think what that did is it actually, one, had a wake up call to the regulators, where they really realized that when you are regulated in their jurisdiction, and that's if we move out of the European Union, where are you actually offering your product line? And I think that's the question that a lot of financial institutions that are going down the route in crypto, they need to ask that question before they invest heavy resources getting a regulatory framework, for example, in Hong Kong or even Dubai, and them finding out that actually 90% of your client base is not even in those jurisdictions. And then the question arises is, can you still onboard those clients that are not in those jurisdictions under that regulatory framework? And probably the answer is going to be no. I think you will see some pockets of memorandums between, for example, Hong Kong and possibly other regulators around the world, other countries. Without doubt, we will see that, where you will see that they treating their jurisdiction in the same way, and they will have some sort of adoption between them, which will allow for the ability to onboard, for example, clients from other regions. But to be frank with you, it's too early to say who's going to partner with who at this point in time. And ultimately, we don't want to end up in the same position as we've seen many investment firms, where they are really looking now to identify where to get a regulatory license that's maybe a little bit easier, but ultimately doesn't open more doors for them. So I think it's very important that the investment firms try to understand what is it they need the license for, where are they going to operate from and into, and then identify if there are hurdles that will prevent them from really opening up the business opportunities that they have in mind at the outset of the relationship. Because I think if you go down the route of which one's more attractive from a tax point of view, or possibly from an easier regulatory framework point of view, I think they're going to be heavily disappointed further down the line. So I would have a very careful think about that before I would do something if I was them.
Hmm. It sounds like, again, we have to wait and see. Sure, MiCA is coming down the pipeline, as we say. Sure, these other jurisdictions are trying to come on board as well. But it seems like we definitely need a lot of time to see and how this plays out from a regulatory standpoint and from a commercial standpoint.
Exactly. And also, if you are planning to onboard clients from outside the European Union, is there really much point for you to get a license in one of the European member states? So I think there are lots of questions around that. And I have to be honest also to state that the regulators are becoming heavily aware of investor protection. We've spent probably the past decade focusing on KYC, AML, and all the regulations around that. But there's no shred of doubt that now the regulators are beginning to realize that investor protection is also at the heart of all these regulatory frameworks, including MiCA. And ultimately, how can you protect your client if your client is in a different jurisdiction and you are actually licensed in another jurisdiction, and ultimately the whole entire investor protection regime is different. And of course, in the event or a sad event where a particular firm ends up going bust for whatever reason, who's going to take care of those investors that have potentially invested heavily in some of these setups? So I think the question of investor protection is a very big one when it comes down to MiCA and other similar regulatory frameworks, whether that's Dubai or Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm. Great. Remonda, can you tell our audience what services from Muinmos can European crypto companies take advantage of today to be compliant with the upcoming regulations, but also to continue their growth trajectory if hopefully they are on such a trajectory now?
People that know us, they know we're an ecosystem. The way we operate our product line is basically through modules, and each module takes care of different things. I've just mentioned a few moments ago about the investor protection, and of course, one of our core modules takes care of that. Is, can I onboard that client? Can I offer them, for example, the crypto product that I'm about to offer them? And can I offer it to them based on their classification? And can I offer it to them based on the jurisdiction? So these questions collectively, they seem straightforward, but the complexity that lies behind it on a cross-border basis, it's incredibly complex. So that part is completely covered by one of our modules. And then, of course, the KYC, AML clearances that every firm under MiCA will have to comply with and, of course, perform is also covered by our engine's capabilities, which means that you are clearing the client from both an investor side. Can I offer them the product in their jurisdiction? Can I onboard them based on all the relevant clearances, all the way from securing this is the correct client, there's nothing adverse about them. If it's a corporate, of course, it does all the relevant corporate clearances and due diligence parts of that, all the way into profiling them in terms of risk. So you will have the ability to monitor them 24/7. So in our ecosystem, you would be able to perform all those steps from pretty much A to Z without any form of interference. And yet it's still modular, so you can pick and choose what you want.
Mm-hmm. To me, that sounds great because I remember the old days of having to do all of these things manually on a compliance or legal team, and thank God for these kind of technological advancements. Remonda, I guess as a last question, since everything sounds like it's very automated, are you using artificial intelligence or language machine learning models or anything
Yeah,
like that?
there's a lot of talks about that, right, Nikolai, across the market, without doubt. We use a lot at Muinmos. Otherwise, the capability of being able to onboard a client in a matter of minutes is virtually impossible without the use of a lot of different tools and, of course, artificial intelligence behind it as well. Yes, we do. We apply a lot around the data, the logic, the interpretations, the extractions, the performance also of the tool in order to get you from that A to Z in a matter of minutes. And of course, building all that logic in literally a couple of clicks of a button is incredibly powerful. And we've been at it for a very long time. It's over a decade now. But it's fun and we enjoy it. And it's something that I think, exactly as you say, Nikolai, for us, the excitement comes from having seen many of our institutions before before coming to us, where they've been handling this in a very basically separated manner, where they're logging into many different platforms. They're trying to establish, where can I find data on this in order to move from step A to step B, and of course manually is a huge nightmare situation in our sector. You simply can't perform any of these checks manually today. The market has become incredibly advanced, and the risk of fraud and digital tampering is gone to another level. So to rely on manual interventions and humans is actually a major risk in our business.
I see. FinanceFeeds is actually going to be covering the topic of AI and how we're using, or how different companies, much like yourselves, are using AI and machine learning in their services. So
Yeah.
we're definitely gonna reach out to you quite soon to get some more details and some feedback on this, because it's definitely a very, very interesting topic. And unfortunately, today we don't have time to discuss it in more detail. Remonda, I wanted to thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your insights on what's coming with MiCA and the different regions in the world that are trying to compete as also regulated countries and regions. And we wish you the best of luck this spring and going forward.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon. Thanks very much, Nicola.
You're welcome. Thanks.